everybody. Walter Bowne here talking about satire today and the various types of satire. Most of you have heard about satire, watch Saturday Night Live, you might be into Monty Python, South Park, all great forms of satire. Satire, by definition, is a literary art. It diminishes a subject by making it ridiculous. It evokes attitudes towards amusement, scorn, ridicule, or indignation. Satire, when done well, and oftentimes satire and parody are very, very different. Satire is a weapon. And if you're really, really upset about something, like a topic, let's just say it's like the cost of college, you could write an essay talking about how expensive it is and how much money they spend on things, or you could do a satire and make people laugh at the exorbitant pathways and rock wall that's like 2 miles high, and it evokes then anger, right? So you laugh, but afterwards you get angry at it. So satire in Huckleberry Finn, Mark Twain is upset about many things, and he writes a satire exposing the hypocrisy of the Christian religion, of the aristocracy, of education, of superstition. So let's talk satire. All right, Shakespeare's Malvolio in Twelfth Night is satirical because he's a pompous, fatuous, hypocritical Puritan. All right, he thinks he's above everybody else. So if you don't like that kind of I am holier than thou type of person, what do? You put him in yellow stockings, have him cross-gartered, and make a fool out of himself on stage in front of the love of his life, and he is brought down, right? So here's an example, and I'll play you a little piece. Satire has usually been justified by those who practice satire as a corrective to human vice and folly. So if I'm a hypocrite, satire attacks me. If I do something and I'm greedy, satire attacks my greed or societal greed. Those with bad qualities, after all, need punishment, like the Grangerfords and the Shepherdsons. It's like when he says, it's okay to kill if you're in a feud, right? That's ridiculous. It's never okay to kill, right? Except maybe self-defense. But it just shows the hypocrisy, right? Huck calls Colonel Grangerford a gentleman. Is he? Absolutely not. He goes on how he looks like a gentleman, but even that description of how he looks in chapter 18, the darkness, the thinness, the darkness in his eyes, this guy is obviously characterized as an evil person. And we can take a look at a satire from Bugs Bunny from, I think, the 1950s, where you have the Hatfields and McCoys, which were really historically two families that were feuding, like the Capulets and the Montagues, like the Jets and the Sharps. But Bugs Bunny pokes fun of these types of characters, making them beat up each other in a comical way in order to prove a point. You're both despicable, right? Both of you deserve this. So let's watch that. Okay, Monty Python is very famous, going back to the late 60s, early 70s, and even into the 80s a little bit, with the meaning of life, for their satire. The first satire we're going to watch is, satirizing news programs, talking heads, bringing someone on who's an authority. You see this on CNN, Fox News, you see this all the time. But if you take it as satirical, it pokes fun of this, right? The second thing we're going to watch is a political satire, satirizing romances, King Arthur, and also the idea of peasants and the working classes and social class, and we'll take a look at this. Okay, another form of satire is parody. Oftentimes I find Saturday Night Live is funny, but not necessarily great satire. I mean, that's my opinion. We can argue about that if we want to. But it's more parody. We laugh when Alec Baldwin plays Trump, but it doesn't have really a weapon. It's not really trying to make a particular point. It's more parody. We laugh for the sake of laughing at the ridiculousness rather than let's really do something about it. It should get you up out of your seat to do something about it, to get angry, right? Really, really good satire. So oftentimes parody is a form of satire, and it's very effective, right? But oftentimes it's just for laughs. Like for instance, Spaceballs. It imitates a serious matter. It's a parody of Star Wars. Star Wars is very serious. There's very little jokes in Star Wars, except for maybe some Han Solo stuff and some Wookiee comedy. I don't know. I love Star Wars, but it's not comedy. Spaceballs is comedy. It's a parody of it. So we have Dark Helmet rather than Dark Father, Darth Vader. We have lots of crazy stuff. We'll take a look. Saturday Night Live, we have Jeff Sessions here, who is lampooned for comic effect. Again, it's not really used as a weapon. I don't see it used effectively as a weapon. Now maybe they want to use it as a weapon, but I don't think it's all that effective. It just makes us laugh. They're exaggerating his features. He's a Southerner. He's maybe not that educated. And that's how they portray him on Saturday Night Live. Okay, of course they have a woman who portrays him. Nancy, who is this? Kate McKinnon. Yes. Kate McKinnon, thank you very much. Think about if you're a man and there's a woman imitating you. That might be offensive. All right, we're like, hey, what are you doing to me? You're saying I'm effeminate? So let's take a watch at this and let's see how they are using him as a caricature of a Southern kind of like hillbilly kind of guy who eats possums. Okay, let's watch just a few clips from three things. Chief Wiggum from Saturday Night Live, from The Simpsons. Of course, these are all kind of broad stereotypes, right? Stereotypes are never good, except, of course, maybe when it's in comedy, and even then it gets a little dicey, all right? So we'll talk about, especially with Jim, if he's stereotyped. Jim says some funny stuff, but is it a stereotype of a uneducated slave, or is it legitimately Jim? We'll talk about that. Sean Spicer, of course, the Saturday Night Live caricature of the real Sean Spicer. Spicy. And of course, Larry David, who I love, Curb Your Enthusiasm, imitating or doing a lampoon of Bernie Sanders. Again, this is more lampooning parody than like the angry satire. Let's take a watch. Okay, here's some other terms I'd like you to know. Travesty. Travesty mocks a particular work by treating a lofty subject in a jocular manner. All right, so if we say that play was a travesty, that means it was bad. However, in literature, it's a work that mocks a particular work by treating it like Pamela by Samuel Richardson, I think, and then having the book, I forget who it was written by, called Shyamala. So when Shyamala came out, everyone knew that it was a travesty of the original, right? A mock epic, a trivial subject matter in an epic genre, like a poem called The Ode on the Death of a Favorite Cat. Not Kate, that should be Cat, right? So Ode on the Death of Ulysses, or, Ophelia. That would be appropriate. This is mocking that type of epic, right? And it's all comedy. This is all comedy, under the broad umbrella of comedy. But not all comedy is used for the same purpose. Burlesque, there's the burlesque shows. We're not talking about that. What we're talking about here in literature is a work that imitates the manner, form, and style, but makes the imitation amusing by ridiculous disparity. If you get the chance to read Mark Twain's The Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court, I see it as a bit of a burlesque, because it imitates the manner of a romance, King Arthur. However, it injects a modern character, a Connecticut Yankee, who goes back in time with all his ingenuity and scientific knowledge and totally destroys the society. He electrifies the knights, like actually electrifies them and fries them and kills them. And that's just one of many, many things that happens, right? But it's a burlesque. Again, it's a bit of a satire. Not a bit of a satire, it is a total satire of both Yankee ingenuity, who thinks technology will solve all our problems, and a satire of that type of romance of medieval times. And And a few other terms I want you to be familiar with. Please put these down in your notes. A bombast is verbose or inflated diction to arouse humor. If I'm a character and I give a bit of purple prose, and it's very lofty, elevated, that can be really, really funny. Whether you're poking fun of the person who is speaking in a lofty manner, over elaborate style, which is considered like cotton stuffing, and the person may not know it, right? So when Malvolio is speaking in a very highfalutin manner, we're laughing. When the king and when the Duke and the Dolphin speak in bombast, it's funny. They're idiots and they're trying to speak like they're intelligent. Sarcasm, which of course you guys know and you use all the time. Ordinary speaking, sometimes used as the equivalent for irony. Right? Comic relief, we have comic relief in both works. Age of Innocence, not so much in Age of Innocence, more so in Huckleberry Finn, where it's dramatic and then something happens to ease the tension. You see this in tragedy more because it's just so tragic, we need some light spots. Hamlet has this occasionally. Huckleberry Finn, which is a comedy, it's a bit of all comedy, but sometimes it's even more comic than the regular narrative. All right, comedy materials work to amuse, involve, interest. No disaster will occur in a comedy. Does disaster happen in Huckleberry Finn? Yes. Is it a true comedy? By definition, maybe not. In Shakespeare, no one dies. In a comedy, they all get married at the end, right? We love romance comedies, rom-coms. Serious things happen, but at the end, we know it's all going to work out. It's just finding out how it works out, like When Harry Met Sally, those types of things. Humor, wit is always said by the speaker to be witty. So if I say something like, my wife and I have one thing in common, we're both in love with me, that's witty. If I say there's one thing worse about being talked about, wait for it, that's not being talked about, right? That's from Oscar Wilde. That's witty. Humor, the speaker may not know he or she is being funny, right? We might be laughing and the person on stage or in the story doesn't realize that's funny, okay? So wit tends to be aphoristic, meaning a pithy and pointed statement of truth. We'll study this more when we get to Ben Franklin and Emerson and Thoreau. But oftentimes wit is aphoristic. It's a short, concise, parallel structured statement that is witty, right? Oscar Wilde is the genius in Bernard Shaw. The two of them are geniuses. And we'll watch a clip of this too, right? I hope you've enjoyed this brief summary of satire, and I'll see you next time. Take care.
Could you stop? Because I just noticed that was...
Yeah, it's low battery.